The 1990s were supposed to be the decade when motorcycles got serious. Sport bikes dominated showroom floors, race replicas ruled magazine covers, and anyone who wasn't chasing lap times was dismissed as irrelevant. But what if I told you that some of the most deceptive, most underestimated, and most secretly thrilling motorcycles of that decade wore disguises so convincing that riders blew past them on highways without realizing what was about to disappear in their mirrors? We're talking about sleepers, machines that looked ordinary, practical, even boring, but that concealed performance so shocking that superbike pilots found themselves embarrassed at stoplights by bikes they'd never considered threats. Today, we're counting down 12 unknown sleeper motorcycles of the 1990s, from retro-styled rockets to naked bruisers hiding superbike souls, from touring bikes with race DNA to small displacement screamers that rewrote the rules about what engine size meant for performance. These aren't just forgotten performance bikes. These are wolves in sheep's clothing that proved the 90s weren't about compromise, but about hidden capability, waiting to catch everyone by surprise. Number 12, 1990, Honda Hawk GT. The 1990 Honda Hawk GT takes the 12th position as a motorcycle that was underpowered on paper, but beloved for agility and handling, creating a cult classic that proved performance wasn't just about horsepower numbers. The 647 cubic inch V-twin produced 58 horsepower through a configuration that emphasized smoothness and torque delivery rather than peak output, creating an engine that was adequate rather than impressive when judged purely by specification sheets that sport bike enthusiasts consulted when comparing machines. The top speed of approximately 115 miles per hour was modest for the era when leader bikes were approaching 160 miles per hour, and when even middleweight sport bikes were capable of speeds that would exceed legal limits on any public road in America. The sleeper factor came from the Hawk GT's ability to embarrass more powerful motorcycles on twisty roads, where the combination of lightweight at just over 400 pounds, excellent chassis geometry, and superb suspension allowed riders to maintain higher corner speeds than heavier superbikes could achieve, despite those bikes having double the horsepower and substantially higher top speeds on straightaways. The handling was the Hawk's defining characteristic, with the aluminum frame providing rigidity without excessive weight, with the suspension being adjustable and sophisticated beyond what the motorcycle's modest price suggested, and with the overall package creating a riding experience that rewarded skill and that made fast riders faster while exposing the limitations of less talented pilots who discovered that power meant nothing if the chassis couldn't exploit it effectively. The styling was minimalist and purposeful, with the Hawk GT featuring a half fairing that provided some wind protection without the full bodywork that race replicas carried, with exposed frame members and mechanical components, creating an honest aesthetic that communicated function over flash. The V-twin engine configuration was unusual for Honda, which had built its sport bike reputation on inline fours that screamed to high RPM, creating a motorcycle that felt different from the company's mainstream offerings and that appealed to riders who valued character and involvement over raw speed and clinical efficiency. The Hawk GT proved sleepers didn't need overwhelming power. Sometimes the surprise came from discovering a modest motorcycle could outpace machines that bragged louder but couldn't deliver when skill mattered. Number 11, 1999, Aprilia RS 250. The 1999 Aprilia RS 250 takes the 11th position, featuring a 249 cubic inch two-stroke twin, producing 70 horsepower, and looking like a small bike, but possessing GP-derived performance that shocked riders who assumed displacement-determined capability. The two-stroke configuration created power-to-weight ratios that four-stroke motorcycles couldn't match at similar displacements, with the engine delivering explosive acceleration when the power band hit, and the expansion chambers created resonance that supercharged the cylinders beyond what natural aspiration alone could achieve. The top speed of approximately 130 miles per hour was genuinely impressive for a quarter-liter motorcycle, and demonstrated that the RS 250 was no beginner bike, despite the small displacement suggesting that it belonged in the novice category, rather than competing with serious performance machines. The GP-derived technology included the aluminum beam frame that Aprilia had developed through racing suspension components that were sophisticated and fully adjustable, allowing setup for track use, and brakes that provided stopping power adequate for speeds that the two-stroke engine could achieve despite the motorcycle's modest weight. Which sleeper would you take? The screaming Bandit 400 or the deceptive VFR? Drop your pick below and subscribe for more hidden legends that proved looking fast wasn't the same as being fast. The sleeper factor was perfect, with the RS250 being dismissed by riders who judged motorcycles by displacement and who assumed that anything smaller than 600 cubic inches couldn't provide exciting performance, creating situations where the Aprilia would humiliate larger bikes through corners, where the lightweight and race-bred chassis allowed carrying speeds that heavier motorcycles couldn't maintain, despite having twice the displacement. And despite their riders' assumptions, that size mattered more than engineering sophistication and power-to-weight ratios. The styling was fully fared sport bike, mimicking the appearance of Aprilia's larger displacement models and creating visual similarity that made the RS250 look like a serious performance machine rather than like a small bike for learners or commuters. Two-stroke maintenance was demanding, with frequent rebuilds required, and tightening emissions regulations eventually killed the technology entirely, making the RS250 a final expression of performance over environmental compliance. Number 10, 1992 BMW R 1100 RS. The 1992 BMW R 1100 RS features a 1,085 cubic inch boxer twin, producing 90 horsepower with a touring bike appearance but sporty handling, creating the first oil-head boxer that introduced liquid cooling and sophisticated technology that BMW would build on for decades. The 90 horsepower was modest compared to Japanese leader bikes, producing over 120 horsepower, but the BMW's power delivery was smooth and the torque was substantial at low RPM, creating a riding experience that emphasized effortless cruising rather than frantic revving, extracting maximum output. The top speed of approximately 130 miles per hour was adequate for a touring-oriented motorcycle and demonstrated that the R 1100 RS wasn't trying to compete with superbikes on top speed, but was instead offering a different performance philosophy where comfort, reliability, and sustainable high-speed travel mattered more than absolute velocity or acceleration numbers that sport bikes advertised, but that most riders rarely utilized on public roads. The sleeper factor came from riders underestimating the BMW's capabilities through twisty roads, where the low center of gravity from the boxer engine configuration and the sophisticated telelever front suspension created handling that was more capable than the touring appearance suggested. The oil-head boxer introduced partial oil cooling supplementing traditional air cooling, advanced Motronic fuel injection, and typical BMW build quality, accumulating high mileage reliably. Complexity meant expensive repairs compared to simpler Japanese bikes, but the R 1100 RS established the template for modern BMW sport touring motorcycles. Number 9, 1998 Kawasaki ZRX 1100. The 1998 Kawasaki ZRX 1100 takes the 9th position, featuring a 1,052 cubic inch inline-4 producing 106 horsepower, creating a retro Eddie Lawson replica that looked classic but packed modern punch, surprising riders who assumed that retro styling meant compromised performance. The 106 horsepower was strong for a naked bike and created acceleration that was genuinely quick, despite the lack of aerodynamic bodywork that sport bikes used for reducing drag and improving top speed beyond what naked bikes could achieve with riders sitting upright in the wind. The top speed of approximately 150 miles per hour demonstrated that the ZRX was genuinely fast, despite the retro appearance suggesting that this was a nostalgia piece rather than a serious performance motorcycle, with the speed being limited primarily by aerodynamics rather than by engine output that could have pushed the motorcycle faster if streamlined bodywork had been fitted, creating less drag. The Eddie Lawson connection came from the paint scheme and styling that referenced the AMA Superbike Championships that Lawson had won riding Kawasaki machines during the 1980s, creating visual links to racing heritage and giving the ZRX credibility beyond what a generic naked bike would have possessed. The engine was based on the proven inline-4 that Kawasaki had developed for the Ninja sport bikes, providing reliability and performance that decades of development had refined into a power plant that was smooth, powerful, and durable enough to accumulate high mileage without the constant attention that more highly tuned racing engines required. The chassis was competent with a steel frame that was heavier than the aluminum frames that sport bikes were adopting, but that provided adequate rigidity for the performance the engine delivered, with suspension that was adjustable and that allowed the ZRX to handle spiritedly, despite the weight penalty that the steel construction imposed. The sleeper factor was substantial, with the retro styling creating an appearance that suggested the ZRX was about nostalgia rather than about performance, allowing skilled riders to surprise sport bike pilots who didn't realize that underneath the classic bodywork was a modern engine capable of acceleration that would embarrass riders who assumed that old-school looks meant old-school performance. The ZRX developed a following among riders who wanted performance without the aggressive ergonomics that sport bikes demanded, creating a motorcycle that could be ridden comfortably for hours while still delivering thrills when roads became interesting and when the throttle was opened, releasing the inline-four's power. Number 8, 1997, Suzuki RF 900R. The 1997 Suzuki RF 900R features a 937 cubic inch inline four producing 125 horsepower, creating a motorcycle that was overshadowed by the GSX-R, but that was blisteringly fast in a sport touring shell hiding performance that many riders never discovered. The 125 horsepower was genuinely impressive and placed the RF 900R in the same performance category as dedicated superbikes that received all the attention and all the magazine coverage, while the sport touring Suzuki was dismissed as a practical bike for commuters and weekend tourists, rather than being recognized as a capable performance machine. The top speed of approximately 155 miles per hour was superbike level velocity, demonstrating that the RF 900R was genuinely quick despite the comfortable riding position and the practical features, including a center stand and luggage capacity that sport bikes sacrificed in pursuit of minimum weight and maximum performance. The sleeper factor came from the sport touring classification, creating expectations of adequate but uninspiring performance, allowing the RF 900R to shock riders who challenged it at stoplights or who attempted to pass on highways only to discover that the practical-looking Suzuki could accelerate hard enough to stay ahead or to pull away from motorcycles that looked faster, but that couldn't match the RF's combination of power and aerodynamics. The detuned GSX-R engine emphasized mid-range torque over peak power, excellent fairing wind protection, 5-gallon fuel capacity, comfortable two-up seating, and proven Suzuki reliability. The RF 900R hit the sweet spot where performance met practicality, touring comfortably while embarrassing sport bikes when needed. Number 7, 1996, Honda VFR 750F. The 1996 Honda VFR 750F takes the 7th position featuring a 748 cubic inch V4, producing 100 horsepower with touring looks but near superbike performance, and legendary reliability, creating a motorcycle that was seriously underestimated by riders who judged capability by appearance rather than by engineering sophistication. The 100 horsepower from a 750 cubic inch engine was impressive output, demonstrating Honda's ability to extract performance from moderate displacements through advanced engineering, including the gear-driven cams that created the distinctive mechanical whine that VFR enthusiasts loved, and that became one of the motorcycle's signature characteristics. The top speed of approximately 145 miles per hour was genuinely fast and placed the VFR in territory where only dedicated sport bikes typically operated, demonstrating that the sport touring classification didn't mean compromised performance, but rather meant that performance was delivered in a package that was more versatile and more comfortable than single-purpose racing replicas that sacrificed everything for track capability. The V4 engine configuration was unusual and expensive to manufacture, requiring more complex castings and more components than inline fours that dominated the sport bike category. But the configuration provided smooth power delivery and compact dimensions that inline fours couldn't match, despite being cheaper to produce and simpler to maintain. The sleeper factor was perfect, with the VFR being dismissed as a sport tourer for older riders who had outgrown the discomfort of sport bikes and who wanted something more practical, creating situations where the Honda would shock riders who didn't realize that underneath the practical exterior was an engine and chassis capable of performance that would embarrass many motorcycles wearing racing bodywork and carrying sport bike credentials. The reliability was legendary, with VFRs accumulating enormous mileages without major mechanical issues, with owners reporting 100,000 miles and beyond with only routine maintenance required, creating a reputation for durability that few motorcycles could match, and that made the VFR a favorite among riders who wanted performance without the constant mechanical attention that more highly strung motorcycles demanded. The versatility allowed the VFR serving as a daily commuter, a weekend sport bike, a long-distance tourer, and a track day machine depending on how the rider chose to use the motorcycle's capabilities, creating a single bike that could replace multiple specialized machines in a garage and that could excel in each role without the compromises that more focused motorcycles would impose when used outside their intended purposes. The VFR 750F established a template for sport touring motorcycles that Honda would continue developing for decades, with the VFR line remaining in production and evolving while maintaining the fundamental character that made the original such a compelling and underestimated performer. Number 6. 1994 Ducati Monster 900. The 1994 Ducati Monster 900 features a 904 cubic inch L-twin, producing 73 horsepower with minimalist design but sporty handling that started the naked bike revolution. And that proved style and substance could coexist without the heavy bodywork that sport bikes carried. The 73 horsepower was modest compared to Japanese inline fours producing over 100 horsepower from similar displacements. But the Ducati's power delivery was characterful, with the L-twin producing distinctive sounds and vibrations that created emotional connections that clinical Japanese fours couldn't replicate, despite their superior output and their smoother operation. The top speed of approximately 125 miles per hour was adequate rather than impressive, demonstrating that the Monster wasn't about straight-line speed, but was instead about delivering an engaging riding experience through corners, where the excellent chassis, the quality suspension, and the light weight allowed maintaining speeds that heavier sport bikes with more power couldn't match. When roads became technical and when handling mattered more than horsepower, the sleeper factor came from riders dismissing the Monster as a style bike for posers who wanted Italian cachet without caring about performance, creating situations where skilled monster pilots would embarrass sport bike riders who discovered too late that the minimalist Ducati could carry corner speed that more powerful motorcycles couldn't maintain despite their advantages in engine output. Ducati's revolutionary design stripped bodywork, exposing beautiful mechanical components, with the iconic trellis frame becoming instantly recognizable and widely copied. The Monster shared 916 superbike chassis DNA, providing geometry and suspension, allowing superb handling despite upright ergonomics, proving naked bikes could deliver racing performance with daily usability. The Monster started a movement with naked bikes becoming increasingly popular, as riders recognized that full fairings weren't necessary for enjoying performance, and that the stripped-down aesthetic had its own appeal that differed from but wasn't inferior to the fully faired sport bikes that had dominated for decades. Number 5. 1995 Triumph Speed Triple T 309. The 1995 Triumph Speed Triple T 309 takes the 5th position, featuring an 885 cubic inch triple producing 97 horsepower, with naked styling hiding superbike DNA and representing an early Street Fighter sleeper that proved British motorcycles could compete with Japanese performance machines. The 97 horsepower was strong output from the triple-cylinder configuration that Triumph had chosen for differentiating its motorcycles from the inline fours that Japanese manufacturers favored, creating engines that sounded different and that delivered power differently with the 3-cylinder configuration, providing smoother operation than twins, but more character than fours. The top speed of approximately 135 miles per hour was genuinely quick and demonstrated that the Speed Triple wasn't just about style, but possessed genuine performance capability that allowed keeping pace with sport bikes, despite the naked configuration creating aerodynamic drag that limited top speed compared to fully faired motorcycles that could slice through air more efficiently. The sleeper factor came from Triumph's reputation during the 90s as a company that built beautiful motorcycles with questionable reliability rather than being recognized as a serious performance manufacturer, creating situations where Japanese sport bike riders dismissed the Speed Triple as a style bike, without realizing that the British Triple could accelerate hard enough to embarrass Hondas and Yamahas and Kawasaki's, whose riders assumed that Japanese engineering superiority was absolute and unquestionable. The styling was aggressive with the twin headlights, creating a distinctive face that became a Speed Triple trademark, with the minimalist bodywork exposing the frame and engine, creating an honest aesthetic that celebrated mechanical components rather than hiding them behind plastic. and with the overall appearance communicating street fighting attitude that differentiated the Triumph from more refined Japanese naked bikes that were sophisticated but less characterful. The engine was derived from the Daytona sport bike that Triumph had developed for competing against Japanese supersports bikes, providing the speed triple with genuine racing DNA that wasn't just marketing rhetoric, but was actual technology transfer from track-focused machines to street-oriented nakeds that benefited from the development work that racing had required. The handling was excellent, with the aluminum beam frame providing rigidity without excessive weight, with the suspension being adjustable and sophisticated, allowing setup for aggressive riding, and with the overall chassis creating a motorcycle that rewarded skill and that made fast riders faster while remaining manageable for less experienced pilots who weren't ready for full superbike performance. The Speed Triple established Triumph as a legitimate performance manufacturer rather than just as a maker of retro motorcycles trading on British heritage without delivering modern capability, proving that the reborn company could build machines that competed with the best from Japan and that offered distinctive character that differentiated them from the homogeneous sport bikes that were becoming increasingly similar across manufacturers. Number 4. 1991. Suzuki Bandit 400. The 1991 Suzuki Bandit 400 features a 398 cubic inch inline-4, producing 59 horsepower, creating a motorcycle that looked like a commuter bike, but revved to 14,000 RPM, developing a cult following among riders who appreciated small displacement performance. The 59 horsepower from a 400 cubic inch engine was impressive specific output, demonstrating Japanese engineering sophistication, extracting maximum performance from minimal displacement through high compression, aggressive cam timing, and the willingness to rev to stratospheric engine speeds that would destroy less carefully engineered power plants. The top speed of approximately 110 miles per hour was respectable for a small displacement motorcycle and demonstrated that the Bandit 400 could keep up with traffic and could provide exciting riding despite the modest engine size, suggesting that performance would be merely adequate rather than genuinely engaging. The sleeper factor was substantial, with the Bandit being dismissed as a beginner bike or as basic transportation for budget-conscious riders, creating situations where the little Suzuki would embarrass larger motorcycles through corners, where the lightweight and the screaming inline-4 allowed maintaining momentum that heavier bikes couldn't match, despite having twice the displacement and despite their riders' assumptions that size mattered more than power-to-weight ratios and rider skill. The inline-4 configuration was unusual for a 400 cubic inch motorcycle, with most manufacturers using twins for the displacement category. But Suzuki's choice created an engine that was smooth and that delivered power in a linear, predictable manner across the rev range, rather than having the abrupt power band that two-stroke or highly tuned twin-cylinder engines created. The rev limit of 14,000 RPM was genuinely high, requiring precise engineering and quality components that could withstand the stresses that such engine speeds created, with the need for frequent oil changes and careful maintenance being essential for longevity, but being accepted by enthusiasts who appreciated the performance that the high-revving 4 provided. The cult following developed particularly in markets where licensing restrictions limited riders to small displacement motorcycles, but where those riders still wanted performance and excitement rather than just basic transportation that larger displacement motorcycles provided in markets where restrictions didn't exist. The Bandit 400 demonstrated that displacement wasn't everything, and that a well-engineered small motorcycle could deliver riding experiences that were genuinely thrilling rather than being merely adequate for getting from point A to point B without embarrassment or frustration at being left behind by faster traffic. Number 3. 1993 Yamaha GTS 1000. The 1993 Yamaha GTS 1000 takes the third position, featuring a 1002 cubic inch inline-4, producing 100 horsepower with radical front suspension, using hub-center steering disguised in touring looks, creating one of the most innovative but most misunderstood motorcycles of the 90s. The 100 horsepower was strong output, providing performance that was genuinely quick despite the GTS being positioned as a sport tourer rather than as a dedicated sport bike chasing maximum power and minimum weight. The top speed of approximately 140 miles per hour demonstrated that the GTS was genuinely fast despite the unconventional front end, suggesting that handling would be compromised. or that the motorcycle was an engineering experiment rather than a serious performance machine. The hub center steering eliminated the telescopic forks that virtually all motorcycles used, instead employing a complex linkage that kept the front wheel rigidly positioned relative to the steering axis, preventing the dive under braking and the geometry changes during suspension compression that telescopic forks created, theoretically improving handling and braking stability beyond what conventional front ends could achieve. The sleeper factor came from the touring appearance and from the radical front end, creating an impression that this was a technology showcase rather than a practical performance motorcycle, allowing the GTS to surprise riders who didn't realize that underneath the unusual styling was a conventional Yamaha inline-4 that could accelerate hard, and that was mounted in a chassis that handled differently from traditional motorcycles, but that was ultimately very capable when riders adapted to the unique steering feel that hub center systems created. The innovation was impressive, but the execution was problematic, with the hub center steering being heavier than telescopic forks, and with the complexity creating maintenance challenges and creating costs that made the GTS expensive compared to conventional sport touring motorcycles that didn't offer revolutionary technology, but that were lighter, simpler, and more familiar to riders, accustomed to traditional motorcycle dynamics. The market reception was lukewarm, with the GTS selling poorly despite the engineering sophistication and despite the genuine performance that the motorcycle delivered, with most riders preferring conventional motorcycles over the radical Yamaha that required learning new techniques and accepting compromises, including weight and complexity that the hub center steering imposed. The GTS remained in production for only a few years before Yamaha discontinued it, making the motorcycle a rare and collectible curiosity, representing a road not taken in motorcycle development, where innovation was genuine, but where market acceptance was insufficient to justify continuing production of a motorcycle that was technically impressive but commercially unsuccessful. Number 2, 1992 Honda CB1000 Big One. The 1992 Honda CB1000, known as the Big One, takes the second position, featuring a 998 cubic inch inline-4 producing 97 horsepower, creating a naked bike with superbike power that was underrated outside Japan, where the motorcycle achieved cult status among riders who appreciated raw performance without sport bike styling. The 97 horsepower was strong output, providing acceleration that was genuinely quick, despite the naked configuration creating aerodynamic drag that limited top speed compared to fully fared sport bikes that could use similar power to achieve higher velocities through reduced wind resistance. The top speed of approximately 135 miles per hour demonstrated that the CB1000 was genuinely fast, despite looking like a standard motorcycle rather than like a purpose-built performance machine, with the speed being limited primarily by the upright riding position, creating drag that prevented the naked Honda from achieving the velocities that its power output could deliver if streamlined bodywork had been fitted. The sleeper factor was perfect with the standard styling, creating an appearance that suggested the CB1000 was a practical all-rounder rather than a performance motorcycle, allowing skilled riders to embarrass sport bike pilots who discovered that the unassuming Honda could accelerate as hard as their fully fared racing replicas, despite looking like basic transportation rather than like a serious performance machine. The engine was a destroked version of the legendary CBR 1000 inline-4, providing reliability and performance that Honda's racing development had refined, creating a power plant that was smooth, powerful, and durable enough to accumulate high mileage without the constant attention that more highly tuned engines demanded. The naked styling appealed to riders who wanted performance without the aggressive ergonomics that sport bikes imposed, creating a motorcycle that could be ridden comfortably for extended periods, while still delivering thrills when the throttle was open and when the inline-4's power was unleashed. The Japanese domestic market received the CB1000 enthusiastically, with riders appreciating the combination of performance and practicality that the naked configuration provided. But export markets largely ignored the Big One in favor of more obviously sporting CBR models, or in favor of other manufacturers' naked bikes that received better marketing and better distribution. The limited availability outside Japan made the CB1000 a rare sight in Western markets, contributing to the sleeper status, where the few examples that were imported surprised riders who had never heard of the Big One and who didn't realize that Honda had built a naked leader bike that could compete with the best performance motorcycles of the era despite flying under the radar. and never achieving the recognition that its capabilities deserved. Number 1. 1991 Kawasaki Zephyr 750. The 1991 Kawasaki Zephyr 750 takes the top position as the ultimate unknown sleeper of the 1990s, featuring a 738 cubic inch inline-4, producing approximately 76 horsepower with retro styling that hid strong performance, creating a motorcycle that was overlooked compared to the sportier Ninjas, but that could surprise anyone who dismissed it based on appearance. The 76 horsepower was adequate rather than overwhelming, but the Zephyr's lightweight and excellent chassis allowed exploiting the available power effectively, creating performance that exceeded what the modest horsepower number suggested when riders judged capability solely by peak output, rather than considering the complete package of power, weight, and handling. The top speed of approximately 120 miles per hour was respectable, demonstrating that the Zephyr could maintain highway speeds comfortably and could keep pace with sportier motorcycles, despite the retro styling, suggesting that this was a nostalgia piece rather than a serious performance machine. The retro styling was deliberate, with Kawasaki designing the Zephyr to evoke the muscular naked bikes of the 1970s, including the legendary Z1 that had established Kawasaki's performance reputation, creating visual links to heritage, while packaging modern engineering and reliability that the original bikes couldn't provide, despite their iconic status and their importance in motorcycle history. The sleeper factor was maximum, with the Zephyr being dismissed as a retro bike for riders who prioritized style over performance and who wanted to look cool without caring about going fast, creating perfect conditions for surprising sport bike riders who challenged the Kawasaki at stoplights or who attempted to pass on twisty roads only to discover that the retro-styled Zephyr could accelerate hard enough to stay ahead and could corner fast enough to maintain or extend leads when roads became technical. The inline-4 engine was based on Kawasaki's proven Ninja power plant, ensuring reliability and performance that decades of development had refined, with the engine being detuned slightly compared to full sport bike specifications, but remaining strong enough to provide genuinely exciting acceleration when the throttle was opened and when all 76 horses were released. The handling was excellent, with Kawasaki equipping the Zephyr with quality suspension and with chassis geometry that was sporty, despite the retro appearance, suggesting that comfort would be prioritized over performance, creating a motorcycle that rewarded aggressive riding and that could be hustled through corners with confidence and precision. The Zephyr developed a cult following among riders who appreciated the combination of classic styling with modern performance and reliability, with clean examples becoming increasingly valuable as enthusiasts recognized that the Zephyr represented a unique moment in motorcycle history, when manufacturers briefly embraced retro aesthetics before the sport bike arms race resumed dominating development, and before naked bikes became common enough that the Zephyr's pioneering role in reviving the category was forgotten by all, except dedicated fans, who remembered and who maintained these overlooked sleepers. These 12 unknown sleeper motorcycles from the 1990s prove that the decade wasn't about choosing between style and substance, but was about finding the hidden gems that delivered both, without the obvious styling and the aggressive marketing that sport bikes received. From retro rockets to naked bruisers, from touring bikes with superbike soles to small displacement screamers, these were the motorcycles that proved performance wasn't about looking fast, but about being fast when it mattered, and about surprising everyone who made assumptions based on appearances rather than understanding the engineering that created capability without advertising it through loud graphics and race replica bodywork. Which of these sleepers would you ride? Drop your answer below. If you're drawn to motorcycles that don't scream for attention but deliver when the throttle opens, subscribe for more forgotten legends and overlooked performance